This channel is supported by Truefire.
Well, what is this all about then? It's the Truefire Summer Music Festival. What I'm going to tell you about, you can get 1 month of all access for just $1. The all access, you can dip in and out of every single course on Truefire, so that's a really great way to get some awesome courses down you.
Don't tell anyone, but I kind of used to be a bit of a PRS hater, if I'm honest. I think things that I didn't like about them mostly was like how much I'd seen them as a kid with bands like Busted and bands like Nickelback, Fightstar. It was not that I didn't assume that they were probably good guitars. It was more that I'd just seen too many of them, which is a bit of a weird thing to say in it, because we see so many Strats and Les Pauls and stuff like that and don't get fatigued in quite the same way. But anyway, over the years, I think my opinion on this stuff has changed, and I think quite a big chunk of this is really down to when you look at like companies like Fender or Gibson, who is at the top of the company still. It's none of the people that were there at the start, and I think that is a big difference between PRS and any other guitar company really that I'm aware of. Certainly the big ones, you know, you don't hear about Mr. Ibanez or Mr. Fender anymore, do you? Where like the guy is still at the wheel, and I think it does seem to make a difference. Now, I watched a video that they put out on their channel the other day, and I thought it was actually quite illuminating, because Paul was there and he was tapping bits of wood, and you know, we could all tap some wood. Does it matter on a guitar? I don't know, but I feel like I want someone who's building my guitars to have this sort of thing, that they do care about this sort of stuff down to this level of detail.
And they ring like crazy. There's a beautiful tone to it. Which
So yeah, I made that little tune from what I think were some surprisingly resonant pieces of wood. Now, this is a one-piece mahogany body. That's an S2. This is an SE, but obviously this has a mic, you know, a trem in it. But I don't know the exact science on this, but is it fair to say that a multi-piece body is likely to be slightly less resonant? Would you say that's fair? And I think it's probably fair to say that although some of these things don't make the biggest difference in the world, that a guitar at the end of the process is a lot of decisions and a lot of choices made along the way, right? And some of those things really do matter. Like, so Paul was talking about, like, if you're going to be joining bits of wood like this, it does matter that they are dried properly. And that was one of the things that they were talking about in that video, where it's like, well, we double dry these pieces of wood, and they got specific aims that they want to bring the fretboard down to like 2% humidity. They want to bring like the bodies down to like 8% or something like that. And, you know, keeping the space correctly temperate so that when they ship these guitars over the world, they don't move too much. Kind of lots of inside baseball sort of stuff that I think, as a guitarist who, you know, most of us don't get the opportunity to go and visit places like this, I appreciate Paul sharing. What I also quite like about PRS is that you've got more or less quite a very clear, I think, compared to some other brands, like, it's clear where some of your money's going on the guitar. Like, so this is like their entry level type stuff. It's like, where you can see there's not much of a finish here. It's a multiple piece body, you know, and it's built by Cortec in Indonesia, but it is kind of a PRS experience still, versus as you start to go further up the line, like with the S2 range and stuff like that, it's like, okay, well, now we've got a different carve on the top, so that's an additional CNC system. You know, you've got now American pickups in these. This is an older one, so these are actually not American pickups. And then, you know, nicer wood's being used, and the wood is kind of really important to the PRS thing, right? That's why they've got things called like a wood library and stuff like that. So although some people might not think that tone wood is the most important thing on a guitar, like maybe pickups make more of a difference, I do think it, as a sort of rule, start with a better piece of wood. It would make sense that you know, I would definitely say that I appreciate PRS a lot more the more I start to understand the importance of having a company that is there to sort of push the envelope in a way that sort of Gibson and Fender are not necessarily. You know, they're kind of holding up the old legacy designs. Whereas Paul seems to be a guy that is like, well, respecting the old designs and trying to bring elements of that to his own guitars, but in a way that is, I think, still meaningfully different, in my opinion. And again, like talking about what makes a PRS, from the wood selection, I think it's great to see that sort of stuff. And whether it actually makes a difference at the end, whether you feel like the guitar ends up speaking to you after all of that process, I guess is less important than them actually thinking it matters at the factory. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a guitar that I think it kind of looks like they're proud of it. Do you know what I mean? It's not just slapped together. If I did have one comment to make that I've noticed is that, and I've seen Reddit people talk about this, they do come out of the factory with slightly flatter frets than some of the more high-end guitars that I've seen. And that's one area where you might notice like a bit of a difference between a really boutique guitar and some of these PRSs, which I think are about as good as you can make stuff in a factory, really. Like, they do really seem to churn out some good stuff, but it is still a pretty mass manufactured guitar, right? Anyway, let me know your thoughts on PRS in the comments. I really appreciate Paul getting out there and telling people about his guitar. It's marketing in a way, isn't it? But I think it's interesting to know how this stuff is made and what they think matters, because at the end of the day, it at least means that you end up with a guitar that someone believes in somewhere, even if you don't.